Hello, welcome back to my channel, Mental Health with Melissa. I'm Melissa. I'm a licensed clinical therapist based in California. Before we get started, I wanted to show you my t-shirt because it's not in the frame, but in preparation for the video today and in support of Filipino Americans, Filipinos, and Asian Americans because of all of the horrific things that have been happening, I wore my shirt to really represent proud Filipino right here. Before we get started, please don't forget to hit that beloved subscribe and like buttons as I post content every single Sunday and Wednesday. Subscribing and sharing my videos really helps me get information out there to our communities of color and also to those that are interested in the mental health professions. So the point of today's video is really to talk more about the really horrific things that have been happening to Asian and Asian Americans in the world, particularly in the US. So recently I had the extreme honor and pleasure to be interviewed by a journalist that works for the website LAist, and I was featured in the article as a Asian American mental health professional. The article, which I will link below and show right here, is entitled "The Collective Trauma of Anti-Asian Hate. We talked to 5 mental health experts." So in addition to me, there were also other mental health providers that were interviewed. I didn't hear their interviews. I actually read the interviews when the article was published. And so I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that came up from another therapist, and also in having that same question asked to me by the journalist, it really got me thinking, and I wanted to bring that up in this video today. That question is, if you're still interested, how do we as Asian or Asian Americans respond to hate crimes or to hateful language? And a question that the journalist asked me asked some of the other therapists on that article, and also a question that sometimes I get asked by friends and family is, do I need to prepare for a hateful act or for hateful language towards me? And that's a very complex question, because does it suck in very simple terms that we have to have that sort of thinking? Yes, it does. It does suck. And are we being negative or perpetuating the acts of hateful language and hate crimes by doing this? And the short answer to that is no. Because by doing that, we are actually preparing ourselves emotionally and mentally and preparing our physical safety, as opposed to perpetuating any sort of hate crimes or hateful language towards us. The goal is, at the end of the day, to remain safe and to really make sure that we're utilizing the tools that we can to protect, again, our own emotional health and the physical and emotional health of our family members. So in that article, one of the people interviewed had mentioned that hearing about these crimes on the media and on the news are very triggering to a lot of us, because we hear that and we can kind of go back to our own experiences, and people can experience a physiological response to hearing this really horrible news. And so a question that the reporter asked me is, do I recommend other people or other Asians, because the reporter is Asian herself, she identifies as Asian American, do I prepare myself or tell other people to prepare by taking self-defense classes or making sure that I'm able to fight for myself? The response that I had to her, which she didn't actually include in the article, but what I responded to her was, if you feel like that's going to empower you, then more power to you to do it. But if somebody is telling you or enforcing on you that you need to do that because that's the only way that you're going to be safe, then that's another story. But what we can do, and what another therapist talked about in this article, is definitely prepare on how to respond if somebody does make a hateful comment or there's a dangerous situation going on. And what that may look like is if somebody is approaching you and is saying hateful things and you feel that that situation could end up in a very violent type of scenario, then you're going to want to protect yourself first and foremost. Unfortunately, it's apparent that a lot of members of our Asian community did not have the luxury of being able to protect themselves because the hateful acts of violence that happened to them were completely out of the blue and there was no pre-warning. If you saw that most recent video of the Filipino woman walking to church and the male pedestrian coming up to her out of nowhere and just violently assaulting her, that was obviously something that did not look like there was any alert that was going to happen. So obviously in situations like that, that's different. If there's somebody that you see that is coming at you physically by the way that they're postured and you feel like that could end in a violent situation, then I would say definitely remove yourself and your loved ones as soon as possible from that situation. Because at the end of the day, you can respond verbally and let that person know that you don't appreciate their derogatory language, but your safety is key. Now, if it's somebody that comes up and just surprises you with something and it doesn't seem like it's going to end up in a physical violent attack, which I must add as a disclaimer, again, we just really don't know. You can't tell with somebody just by looking at them if they're going to end up being physically violent towards you. So that's kind of a challenging and fine line that we're talking about here. I recently saw a TikTok video of an Asian American dad and his Asian American daughter, and they were filming a TikTok, and you actually hear on the TikTok, because they caught it on video while they were filming a TikTok, somebody coming up to them with the daughter, who couldn't be more than 5 or 6 years old, and say to the dad and the daughter, "Go back to China." Having hateful language like that, you could come out of nowhere. You could see in the TikToker's face that he was very confused. And I think that when we're obviously not prepared for something like that and we're so caught off guard and feel so emotionally attacked like that, it's hard to even know how to respond. So I actually don't know what happened in that situation, because he responded with, "What was that?" And then the person said it again, and then the TikTok ended. And so I think that there isn't really a perfect way to respond, obviously, when you're spoken to in such a hateful manner. But I think that if we do practice how to respond and how we can do wellness checks within ourselves if something like that does happen, we're more equipped to either leave the situation and prioritize our safety, or respond in a way that lets that person know that that's not acceptable. Responding by saying something like, "That's not okay. I don't appreciate what you have to say. You should really check your facts." Those are all okay things to say. You can stand up for yourself with your words and hopefully not have to get into a physical altercation, again, if the person on the other end isn't physically violent. Now, violence can take on many forms, so even just saying something that is filled with such hatred is definitely verbal violence. And so you want to really be careful out there and protect your own emotional safety and your emotional health. And it is a scary time, and to have to talk about this is very troubling. But I think the more conversations that we have about this, the better information that we can get out there to the community, especially in our communities of color and particularly in Asian cultures where mental health can sometimes be stigmatized a lot of the time. So we can protect ourselves, we can protect our loved ones by spreading more psychoeducation about how to protect our emotional health and our responses, while at the same time protecting our safety and responding to any sort of racial hatred. This was an important video for me to make because it is, like I mentioned, a very scary time for a lot of Asian and Asian Americans and the AAPI community. And so I just want to say that I'm with all of my Asian and Pacific Islander brothers and sisters, and I'm right there with you. This has been really hard time seeing a lot of other fellow Filipina and Filipino individuals getting assaulted, and it's just a really scary thing, and we want to make sure that we're here to support each other. So again, don't forget to check out that article that I'm featured on. Until next time, managing mental health matters.